Hey, welcome to this video. My name is Ivan Pashov, and today we're going to be talking about how to sell solar virtually and be successful at it in 2021. If you've already noticed, and if you've not been living under a rock, you've seen what's been going on in the world, and if you're in solar sales already, you've probably seen that your customers are even more okay at being sold from a distance now more than ever, simply because of the circumstances that we're all in. Now, today I'm going to be going over the 3 different ways of selling from a distance, the pros and cons, and how things are going to be changing even more in 2021 and beyond, and what to do and what you can do to be successful at selling solar from a distance. If you've already been in solar for many, many years and 2020 has forced you to sort of change the way you do things, good, okay? If you're brand new to solar sales and you're just starting out and you've just had a few sales under your belt, and you just want to learn, how to be even better at it in 2021 and beyond, then this video will definitely be of help to you. Now, the 3 different ways of selling from a distance. The first will definitely be the Google Hangout way, okay? Google Hangout. Now, what's the difference between Google Hangout and the other ways of selling that I'm going to be going over, like the phone sales and Zoom, okay? Well, first, Google Hangout is pretty accessible by anyone, okay? Your customers will probably have access to it if they have a Gmail account, and you can simply share a link with them and they'll be able to join, okay? So easily accessible, right? That's very important. You don't want to be putting your customers or your potential customers through hell just to jump on a sales call with you, right? You want to make it as easy as possible to make that call, all right? And that's one of the good things about the Google Hangout way of selling, is that it's very easily accessible, okay? Now, another good thing about selling through Google Hangout is that you can show your face, okay? Just the way you're looking at me in the camera right now, you can show your face to the customer, and even though they might not be okay with showing their face, they could see you, which is the most important part, right? They'll be able to see you, and what happens when they see you? They'll see that you're a real human being, okay? Another good thing about, being able to show your face in the camera is that you'll be able to build trust a lot faster than if you were, for example, to sell over the phone, which we'll go over as well. Now, build trust, okay? Very important. So that's about a Google Hangout, okay? Now, the con about a Google Hangout is that you have to understand this, okay? You have to think, you have to be able to put yourself in the customer's shoes, okay? If you're talking to a 75-year-old lady, okay, or a 65-year-old lady, they have no clue how to get a Google Hangout. It doesn't have to be an old lady, actually. I'm giving a bad example here, okay? It might be anyone who's not used to technology, okay? They just hate technology, right? But they're actually interested in solar. So what do you do then? Well, sending them a link and expecting them to join a Google Hangout, that's still making them jump through hoops for them to make the call, all right? So unfortunately, that's the con about, the Google Hangout way of selling, right? You have to make them jump through hoops, okay? Now, although we already discussed that it's easily accessible, there's still customers out there that you're gonna come across that will still find it difficult, okay, to join the Google Hangout. All right, the next way of selling is Zoom, okay? If you've not been living under a rock, you probably know Zoom pretty well by now, okay? Now, what's the difference between Zoom and Google Hangout, since you can show your face in Zoom, okay? So the Zoom way of selling, you can show your face, means that you can build trust instantly, okay? Trust. Again, that's the good thing about Zoom, that you can build trust pretty easily, just like in the above Google Hangout way of selling. Now, again, you can build trust, and it's also easily accessible, just like in the Google Hangout. However, okay, I don't know if you've noticed, but if you've sent somebody a link to join Zoom, when they go online, it would actually ask them to download the Zoom app. And it's actually a little bit more difficult to join the meeting than it is with Google Hangout. That's what I've noticed, okay? And so that's still making people jump through hoops in order to make the meeting. Some people will just not be okay with that, right? And you have to put that in, you have to obviously keep that in mind, right? If you want to be successful at selling from a distance. Now, you can build trust, it's easily accessible, but again, you have to jump through hoops even in this way of selling, okay? And the last way of selling that I'm going to be going over today is the telephone, the oldest tool in the box, right? Now, the telephone is very, very good if you know how to use it correctly. Now, I'm going to start with a pro, okay? If you've noticed in the Google Hangout way of selling and in the Zoom way of selling, you still have to make people jump through hoops to make the call, to make the meeting, okay? With the phone, with the telephone consultation or meeting, whatever you want to call it, sales call, you don't have to make people jump through hoops, okay? So it's the most easily accessible, okay? That's very, very, very important. Again, to iterate why the phone is the best when it comes to accessibility, okay? Making sure that your customer doesn't have to do much to show up on the call, okay? In fact, you're gonna be the one contacting the customer, right? Whereas in these two, you're still gonna be relying on them to be able to get to the meeting, okay? With the third way of selling, which is the telephone, they won't have to do that, okay? You will simply dial the telephone and you'll be able to get through to them, right? They don't have to do jack shit, okay? And that's what's important to know, okay? And a lot of people would probably say, yeah, but I do presentations through Zoom or through Google Hangout, and my customers don't have an issue with it. But I'm pretty sure that if you've been in solar sales and you've been predominantly selling from a distance and you've been using Google Hangout and Zoom, okay, you've probably noticed that there's an unusual drop in your show-up rate, okay? Reason being is because it may be too difficult for the customer to show up for the meeting, okay, like we discussed already. They might not tell you in the initial call because they don't want to feel dumb, okay? But please keep in mind that if they didn't show up to the call, they might have just found it a little bit too difficult for them to do that, right? So the telephone doesn't do that. It's the most easily accessible. Now, when it comes to building trust, this is probably the hardest way to build trust out of these three, okay? Simply because they won't be able to see your face. There's no camera, there's no seeing each other, right? You can just talk to them through the phone. Now, if you're using the telephone to build trust, you'll notice that it's obviously a little bit harder than the other methods simply because they won't be able to see the camera like we already discussed. However, if you know how to take a stranger and turn him into a buyer, and you have a pretty good script that you can work with, that should not be an issue, okay? Now, another pro with the telephone is that you can do it literally from anywhere. You don't have to have a fancy background. You don't have to have a fancy presentation. You can just convey your point while talking to them. You don't have to show them anything. And they'll be the most comfortable talking to you simply because they can be in their pajamas and still talk to you. While if they're on a Zoom or on a Google Hangout, if they don't have their camera on, but you have yours, it's still gonna make them feel like, oh, okay, well, I feel a little bit weird here because, you know, I'm not showing my face, right? Even though they know their situation. Maybe they're wearing I don't know, nothing, right? So again, to recap, the Google Hangout, easily accessible, you can build trust. However, you're still making people jump through hoops, okay? Now, you can have a fancy background, you can have a blurred background, you can have, you know, a green screen. You can do a lot of things with the Google Hangout. However, you need to keep in mind that it's still gonna make some of your customers uncomfortable, and it's a little bit more demanding than, for example, the telephone way of selling. Now Zoom, going through Zoom, again, you can easily build trust because you're still showing your face, okay? And the same things apply as the Google Hangout. However, I have found that it's a little bit more difficult to use Zoom from a customer standpoint than Google Hangout, and you still have to obviously make them jump through hoops to make the meeting. The phone sales is by far the hardest way to obviously build trust with the customer, but at the same exact time, here you could make them feel the most comfortable simply because they could literally be in their pajamas while you're selling them, okay? And that's gonna recap again the whole entire video. I hope you found value in this video. On the next video, I'm gonna be going over how to sell solar from a distance, step by step, regardless of which way of selling you choose to employ in your arsenal, okay? I hope you enjoyed this video. My name is Ivan Pashov, and until next time, stay safe. Let's close some more KWs.